Last week I showed you some of the equipment in the lab, but the real thing that makes the lab is the people in the lab. So today I thought I'd talk about some of the various types of positions / jobs, whatever you want to call them, that you'll find in a typical academic lab. So at a research institution or a university or that sort of thing. And the exact names that are given to the different roles will vary from place to place. So some of these, there's different, slightly different terms that you might see. And yeah, so the primary one, my boss, the PI. So PI stands for principal investigator or primary investigator. And so that's the head of the lab. So they do all the grant writing to get the money, and they have oversee everything, but typically they're not in the lab, actually in the physical, at your bench doing stuff with you. Some PIs are more hands-on, but most of the time it's you follow up and you meet with them periodically, and they help design the overall experimental path and that sort of thing, review papers, do all the grant writing, hold the meetings, and really be the boss. And yeah, so I kind of am recycling an old calendar, so yeah, hopefully the format's okay. What about me? So I was a PhD student. Now I'm a PhD candidate. So the difference between the student, so you start out as a student, and then when you pass your qualifying exams, then you're a PhD candidate. So some places at this point you can leave with a master's, but it really depends on the place. So basically you've taken all your courses usually, and then you pass your qualifying exam, and then you're a PhD candidate. And this is when you focus mainly on your research and that sort of thing. So once you graduate, sometimes you have to stick around for a little while to finish up any experiments, or maybe when you're trying to find your next step. So you can stay on for a little bit as a postgraduate student, they usually call it. But then you typically, one of the next steps, what my next step is going to be is, so some people after they graduate, they go into industry or that sort of thing, or there's lots of jobs where you don't need to do a postdoc. But what I'm going next is going to do a postdoc. So a postdoc is short for postdoctoral fellowship or postdoctoral researcher. And so basically this is where you go to, typically it's in a different lab, and you have more independence, but you also have more responsibility. And you serve, in addition to doing your research, you also serve as an important mentor for the students in the lab as well. But it's not your lab, so you don't get to do you're researching the things that the lab is focused on, but you have more independence in your projects, and you typically have more projects than you would have in your PhD, where you might have one single focus thing. With your postdoc, you often have multiple projects going. Okay. So sometimes postdocs, how long they take, it really varies. So some people actually end up doing multiple postdocs in different labs. So postdocs are a really great way to get experience in different techniques that you haven't learned before. So often you do it in some related topic, but not too related. Sometimes it's crazy different. And so I'm going to go into a more chemical biology lab as opposed to biochemistry. So I'm going to get more of the chemistry skills that I'm really wanting. So I'm really excited. But first I have to graduate and stuff, of course. So, but sometimes postdocs, postdocs typically last a few years. Sometimes they can last a really long time. And sometimes what happens is people they start as a postdoc, but then they stick around and they get more and more responsibility and more comfortable with everything. They're doing a lot of projects, they're helping a lot of people in the lab, and they deserve a raise and a boost in their title because they're doing more than a typical postdoc. So, and sometimes people get hired in these higher positions as well. But there are terms like senior scientists or research associates. So it's still not their lab, but they have more responsibility. And so this is a step above a postdoc. in terms of the responsibility and the projects and the expectations and the pay. So at the other end of things, we have the undergrads. Woohoo! So undergrads are awesome. So we don't actually have undergrads here except for during the summer because I'm at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, which is a research institution, and it's not a university, so we don't have undergraduate students. But during the summer, we have like undergraduates come during the summer to do research. But in places like universities where they do have undergraduate students, they can do like part-time throughout the year as well as during the summer. And so summer research program was at my undergraduate was actually how I got involved in research, and then I kept doing it throughout the school year. So I highly encourage undergrads to get involved in research early. And it's a really great way to get experience and make sure that you really like research, and if maybe discover you really do like research or you don't like research, and that's fine. You don't have to do research if you don't want to do research, but at least you should know. Okay. And yeah, so sometimes you actually have high school students come, sometimes just to like shadow for a day, or sometimes they do some sort of like part-time thing during the summer or that sort of thing. So it all depends. Okay. Some other people who are really, really, really important in the lab are research assistants and technicians. And so speaking of getting experience, this is a really great way for people who graduate from undergrad and maybe they're not sure what their next step is, or they want to go to grad school but they don't feel that they have enough experience. So this is often a really great like stepping stone, but it can also be just like a permanent job type of thing. So we're talking about research assistants and technicians. These are the people often they have to do like the boring work that no one else wants to do, so that the other people can focus on the more like hardcore research things. So often we work with our research associates and technicians to do things like cloning and cell expression, and so they become really, really good at those things, and so they can do it like way better than we could, and they can do it really fast, and since they're doing it for a lot of people in the lab, it's more efficient because you have like one person doing a lot of different samples for a lot of different people, instead of each person then doing their own samples independently. And so I am super thankful for our lab technicians. We actually our 2 lab technicians that we've had for a couple years just left, which is really sad, but we have 2 great new technicians that I'm excited to work with. So thank you to all the research assistants and technicians out there. So then you have people on the more administrative side of things. So there's lab administrators who typically do things like ordering all the supplies, making sure that if there's anything, any problems in the lab, like machines malfunctioning or whatever, they're in contact with the machine maker people, and so yeah, they've had a really tough job this past year because there's been crazy back orders still. Like it seems like it's even getting worse. Like we can't get cell media, so like the food to grow our insect cells until like August. It's ridiculous. Okay, then there's also scientific administrators or science administrators. So these are the people who do more of like the scheduling type stuff, and so often they work for multiple labs. So like our scientific administrator here works for several labs in the building and does the scheduling and all sorts of stuff behind the scenes to make things run. So apart from like our specific lab, there are like core facilities, so do things like mass spectroscopy, microscopy, for the whole entire like institution, and so they have staff. And then there's the facilities staff. So these so many thanks to the custodians who have been keeping us all safe during this pandemic and coming in and cleaning even during the height of the pandemic, bumping up the cleaning. They've been awesome, and I am so grateful to them. And there's all sorts of other people who make an institution run that I just don't have time to mention them all, but I want to say thank you to all of you. You are amazing, and I'm so grateful, and I'm so grateful that all these people are working to help make research possible, and that I get to do research here. So I hope that helps you understand some of the terms and people that you'll find in the lab.